Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Welcome back to Discovered Wordsmith, second half of the podcast with Josh and Rose. This time we're going to be talking about their writing together cooperatively. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, what are some things you guys learned writing together? Because Rose, you said that you've written before, but now you're writing with somebody and it just happens to be your son. So what are some things you've learned differently writing with somebody as opposed to writing on your own?
Actually, I think it's easier for me to write with somebody because then I have a direction that I know instead of where in the whole world am I going to go. I like that part. I like assignments. I think some people would really hate to have an assigned plot given to them or an assigned character. But I like it. That's how I write most of my books. With what he does. First, we come up with this species, human or otherwise. Then we come up with its physiology, how it interacts with its surroundings. And then we ask, what would make life hard for this thing? and then how does this thing overcome based on its thought processes and physiology and et cetera. I mean, if you lay 1,000 eggs and one grows up to maturity, you have an entirely different concept of parenting than, say, a human does. And so that's fun for me.
And it sounds like, though, that you've still had that room to expand and grow, because you were saying how you basically came up with the one character and you take some of what he has and refine it. So it sounds like you've got some constraints, but you're still free to come up with new stuff and new directions. You both throw ideas off each other is what it sounds like.
Yeah. So to me, it's important for, like I've been talking about, I'm trying to design a franchise at the same time that we're developing stories. And an important part of a franchise is how are you working with collaborators? And so to me, that's as fundamental a question as how do we make a good story? And so in order to collaborate, to truly collaborate, you need to have a lot of freedom, be able to emotionally give a lot of freedom to your collaborators. Otherwise, it's not a collaboration. It's a, sort of a, it's like a creative dictatorship, which I'm just not interested in that. That's, again, probably getting back to my career in video games. No one makes a video game alone. There's not one guy who sits in an armchair and says, I want to make a game about a spaceship flying through mines, shooting robots. That's not how these ideas develop. It's the programmer has come up with this amazing way to make a door that opens. And the designer says, ooh, that would look good in the side of a mountain. And the artist says, oh, what if there's, a robot behind it, and then it develops into something that, no one individually expected to happen. And I love that creative chaos. The challenge is to create a conceptual framework that all of that can work inside of. And that's just an exciting place for me to try to navigate. And I love, I just am very blessed that I have someone very close to me, my mom, my teacher, she homeschooled me for many years, who, knows me intimately. And so we have a back and forth that is very easy to navigate and negotiate. I realize this isn't the case with all parent child relationships, but for ours it is.
Or collaboration.
Yeah, and so this is great practice for me to say, okay, how am I going to work with outside collaborators once we get this snowballing and we have authors and artists coming to us and saying, oh, can I please, in the same way, if I was offered a job on a Star Wars movie, I would say, absolutely. What are the creative constraints? Tell me. I'm happy to live within them because I'm working on Star Wars. That's my goal, is that people come to us and say, Tales from Talifar, please I don't care about the constraints. Let me write a little, story in your world.
Actually, that's been a learning process for me because, I used to write my stories and then what was written was written. And to have someone say no and then, rework it. I think it's been a very good lesson for me, but it's also been very difficult to understand the process of many collaborators, many physical concerns about how things can be displayed. Plus, he keeps changing my characters. I describe him one way, and then he draws them a completely different way, and so we have to go change the descriptions.
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing that I think most authors never deal with, which is visual development. It has to happen on visual mediums, TV shows, graphic novels, video games. My whole career has been this. I'll come up with an idea as a designer. The artist will go work on it for a while and come back with something, and it has 2 more arms than I expected. And as the designer, I say, oh, well, I guess that should change the attack pattern then, or it should, and so it's a constant iterative process. In my case, the archetypes that we came up with 20 years ago, they were very rough sketches. And so that's what she's been working off of, is these rough sketches. And then as we start developing the story, I think to myself, ooh, I really need to nail what that specific is because it potentially impacts the story. And I don't want to get to the point 10 years down the road where we're developing a TV series and they realize this thing has 4 arms, not 2. And now this changes some plot. That breaks my whole idea of having everything be canon. So I'm very meticulously trying to design to my limit, do the visual development as far as I can personally. I'm not a professional visual developer. I'm good enough at it that I could get it to the point where once we get to that stage where it's time to become a TV show or whatever, animated characters come out of it, that it's 80% of the way there, and a real professional will take it to the 100% mark.
Hey, Josh, show some of the illustrations in the book. That is what is also different about this book, and sort of economically shot us in the foot. Was he's put over 80 illustrations in there.
Oh, nice.
Detailed illustrations.
It's meticulously illustrated, way too much, and but again, so much of that is happening because of what I was just talking about, needing to take everything to that 80% mark. But I wanted to get back to something you said, Rose, and ask you specifically, because you said it's uncomfortable for you to develop a thing and then be told no. And I wanted to say, now when I say no, this is a serious franchise design problem. There are 2 ways you can be told no, 2 broad categories. One is simply no and nothing after that, right? It's just like, oh, great. Now, and I've had art directors like this. Now I have to intuit what in their brain led them to the no, and I have to guess what to do differently next time, right? As opposed to, no, that doesn't work because there's this other consideration that's coming down the pipe we need to think of, or no, that doesn't work because in the 4th novel, this character was described as swimming in salt water instead of fresh water, and that sort of thing. Right. So in my mind, I am always doing that second category of no when I have to, though I try to minimize how many times I say no. But do you get that impression, Mom, that there's a reason for the no's?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Just not happy with it all the time.
But the worst one, or best one, was when he wrote the chapter for me and sent it to me, and I tore it all apart. And then he got it back, and he tore it apart again. And we just went back and forth, hurt, making each other's feelings hurt. But then we got over it.
And I would say from my perspective, I never felt like my feelings were hurt. I always felt like I was trying to get a particular theme across, or a particular visual composition that I have in my head.
I was being stubborn about things. So.
Well, and that's fine. And that's fine. Collaborators need to have that room to be stubborn sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, first of all, your earlier comment, Josh, about, it takes a lot of people to make a video game is extremely true, except for Axiom Verge. Wasn't that one guy that did that one? So there's always that exception.
Yeah, in the indie space, there are several notable games that have been made by one person, and that's incredible.
But most of the time, it doesn't work out. So, but
yeah, and most of the time, they've spent a decade on it.
Right. What you're saying about collaboration and working together, I think, is a good thing for others to hear, because you got to let go of some of the ego. And I know a lot of writers put a lot of their self and ego into the stories. And I know writers who, I don't want to give it to an editor because they'll want to change things. They'll want to do, or maybe they want to do what's best for the story. And that sounds like both of you, even if you're pushing back a bit at times, you're like, okay, but what's best for the story? What do we want to do for the franchise and the overall arc of everything? That's what's important. Yes, no, or whoever decided what part of anything. And I think a great example is, like you said, I'll say no, but there's a reason because of these other stories. But on the flip side, your mom came up with a character that you hadn't even thought about, and you integrated that in the world. So again, I think what I'm hearing that works well is it's for the story, and we're working together on it, and there's nothing personal about it, any attacks.
Right.
You can still get together for Sunday brunch.
Well, after COVID, yes, that'll be nice to do that.
Well, I understand that I'm writing in his universe, which is why he gets the final say.
Yeah, so that's another important sort of distinction. Again, going back to the idea that I'm trying to manage a franchise eventually. And seeing this as kind of the nascent practice run at it. This is the incubator, as it were. So I'm trying to practice all the skills that I will need to execute even better when I'm working with outside collaborators. And one of those things, like I said, and you repeated, and I think I want to drill down even further on that, is the process of articulating the whys is so important. And I think any author can get value from this. If they get a note back from their editor that says, I cut this entire character, or I blended these two characters, or, whatever, I cut this entire chapter. One of the things that is very helpful is not to react, out of an emotional place of like, every word is my baby and is precious. But instead think, what were these elements serving in my overall, in the themes that I'm trying to evoke? And often that articulation process, you'll find, actually, I agree with the editor because they saw that theme that I maybe didn't see. Or you come back with a better argument and you can convince your editor, yes, I see what you were trying to do there. And so it just helps communication in general to do that. In the times where I've been in leadership positions in the video game industry, that's a skill that I've just kind of honed over a couple decades, is how do you articulate the whys? That's just so important in maintaining good relationships with your collaborators.
We're very fortunate that Josh knows half the people in the world, and
sounds like it.
So he was able to obtain some, I don't want to say sensitivity reader, but that's sort of what they were. People who knew about things we didn't know because of our upbringing or whatever. Like once one person wrote in and said they were shaking and crying because I said such a racist thing in my book. And I'm like, what? So I had to find out, where was the problem? Well, what I wrote was totally innocent in my mind, because I was, it was about this tribe of people. They name their kids after they're born when they do something cute or whatever. They're very casual about how they name their kids. And so I named one Yawn Big. And I was thinking of how a kid yawns, you take a picture of it, and that's just so cute. And I made another one, Hold Tight. And, and I was thinking of the baby hand holding the finger. Okay. So that was my mind. It never even occurred to me that someone else in another setting would read that and think that was saying that natives are lazy and dishonest. And so, well, that was an easy fix. Change the name.
Right.
To Tin Toes or, Walks Fast. That was such a shock to me. And I'm glad that Josh has acquaintances that can tell me these things that I'm unaware of, because I didn't grow up that way. I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said, that totally innocent, not thinking of it, just but other people in other circumstances interpret differently. That's probably an important thing. And I know sensitivity readers are becoming much bigger in today's world to catch things like that unintentional, that could totally get somebody upset, and they could be very vindictive and come after you or whatever. And you're like, you didn't even mean it. And working together, it sounds like that's also good. I also like, because you're from like two different age groups, so you can catch things that each other may not. If you're writing with somebody that's in your same age group, there might be things you would totally miss for outside age groups. Not that you catch everything, but again, that's a definite benefit.
Yeah. I'm a fossil, so I write things and Josh writes back and says, you didn't want to say it that way. And I don't even ask him why anymore. I just change it.
Yeah. Well, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, when I was learning to drive, I took a $10 bill, filled up my gas tank, and bought tacos at Taco Bell. Now you can't even fill up your gas tank. So you're not too much of a fossil over me either. So we're all good.
Yeah, I think it's both having worked in the entertainment industry and being Generation X, which I think I don't know if this is unique to our generation. I definitely know generations after us continue to do this, but there is this process by which completely innocent words and phrases have been twisted into mostly sexual innuendo.
Yeah.
And that,
so
I'm
when
just
his
always
son giggles at something, we know we need to change it.
There you go.
Yeah, and that's just an inevitable erosion that will just, at some point, you just have to cut it off and say, sorry, people, just grow up and accept that's not the intended meaning.
Yes, I agree. So when you're writing, what software and services do you guys use? I'm wondering if you're using anything different. Rose, what do you use when you write? Like when you write?
I'm not using Word.
Okay, you use Word?
Words.
Josh, what do you use?
Yeah, so we use Word because we can do that thing where we can track each other's changes.
Okay. Yeah. OneDrive.
OneDrive. Okay.
Yeah, so that, and then I use a lot of Google Docs for tracking. I have a document for logistics, for what clothes people are wearing, how long their hair is at what stage of the journey. All these just ridiculous logistics that no one will ever care about are tucked away in their own little cubbyhole on my Google Drive. I keep being told by my friends that this is the perfect thing for Scrivener, and I need to get on that. And it's just, already my day job working on video games, I have to know 30 programs at least, and that's probably lowballing it. I do not want to learn another program on my free time. So.
Yeah, and I downloaded Scrivener once because it's supposed to be so handy for authors, and I quickly saw that it was going to take me months and months and months to learn, and I could have spent that time writing, so I just stayed with Word.
Got it. And I know Scrivener probably isn't the best choice for collaboration. It's not the easiest to share Scrivener files and
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, OneDrive is great for sharing.
Yes, OneDrive. I know a lot of authors use Google Docs, so that's about what same things lots of others are using. So your book is out. How are you marketing it, and how are you getting the word out for the book and the series?
So on my end, what I'm doing is being a million places at once. I'm on, let's see, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitch, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Discord. We've got our website, we've got our World Anvil, and I'm probably forgetting a few. So because I'm doing all this visual development anyway, I turn that into content that can hook people and draw them into the world that I'm creating. So I have a YouTube channel that is 28,000 subscribers that I've been building for a decade, just doing art tutorials. And I'm going to be increasingly bending that towards Tales from Talifar, the franchise. So the art that I'll be doing in it, before it was a lot of random stuff. Like last month, I modded my Baby Yoda to make him posable, right? And I've done things where I took my I built a Colossus from the game Shadow of the Colossus, a massive one.
I love that.
Tell them about the gummy worm tutorial.
Yeah, so when I worked on Guild Wars, we created I was in charge of one of the Living World episodes where we were putting new content into, it's an MMO, so we have to always be injecting new stuff. And one of the things we had was a worm boss, the big giant kind of dune-like worm that comes up, and you have, it's a big world event. Everyone has to gather together to defeat it. And so our marketing team was looking at their marketing budget and saying, okay, how do we talk to all the press outlets about this and get them excited about it? What about giant gummy worms? And this is where I thought to myself, you know what? I could make a better gummy worm that actually looks like our worms from the game. And so I turned that into a video where I sculpted it meticulously. It's not just a big, lump. It's got all these little tendrils and a big like glowing spitball and all this kind of stuff. So I created a mold for it and made the gelatin actual like edible giant gummy worms, and we sent those out to the press outlets. But that's really what got my YouTube channel rolling. Is I asked them to link to my channel. So I have that video out there, and suddenly thousands of Guild Wars players were directed to it. So I've had a strong contingent of Guild Wars support ever since then.
Nice. All right. So before we go, and it's been a really great talk with you guys, besides all the wonderful things you've said and advice you've given, do you have any last specific advice for new authors?
Be teachable.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
That's really good. This is something that I see because I teach on my YouTube channel, and I get a lot of questions, and also on my Discord channel, I get a lot of new people who are just getting into things. And yeah, that is the to me, the single biggest problem with improving is getting your feelings hurt when someone says, those eyes are asymmetrical, or maybe if you make the nose a little bit, whatever. So yeah, I agree with be teachable. Oh, and
yeah, can you see this?
Yeah, hold it up a little bit. Writing speculative fiction by, I've seen that. Who's that by?
By yours truly.
Yeah, writing speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And it's not my advice. I took advice from dozens of people, got permission from them, and put it together. And what's different about this writing book is there's 200 excerpts from books in here to show a concept. And again, I got permission from everybody. This took me a year because it takes forever sometimes to track down an author and get permission from them.
Right. That's great. I'll have to make sure and put a link in the show notes for that also.
It is really good. I'm very proud of the work she did on that because she has this broad range of the novels that she's written throughout her life, plus all the work that she did in collaboration with me. And then I think she brought all of that to bear on this amazing book that I think will help.
Yeah.
And it's written for high school students, is that right? But it's applicable.
Yeah, I was aiming at the high school, homeschool market, but I've had lots of different ages read it and tell me it was useful to them.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really fundamentals, which any beginner at any age is going to be useful for.
I recognize the cover, so I think I've run into it either online or somewhere. So it's out there because I've seen it. So that's great. All right. Well, Josh and Rose, it's been great talking to you guys. Your book looks really wonderful. I love everything you were telling us about cooperative writing with others. So I really do wish you guys luck, and hopefully we can touch base after you get a couple more of the books out and see how things are going.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.